I'm sure a lot of you guys remember the old ceremonial hunting tradition of eating the heart out of the first animal you kill. Meat from those organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. You can get those same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And remember, use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase. There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today.
Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast, your home for deer hunting news, stories, and strategies. And now, your host, Mark Kenyon.
Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast. I'm your host, Mark Kenyon, and this is episode number 134. Taking the show with the new year just days away, we're looking back at what we learned in 2016 and looking forward to what we hope to accomplish and experience in the whitetail woods in 2017. Alright guys, welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast, brought to you by Sitka Gear. And today on the show, as I imagine many of you might be doing at this time of year, we are looking back at 2016 and looking forward to 2017. Today, Dan and I are going to be discussing some of the highs and lows of this past year, along with some of our greatest lessons learned, and then we're also going to do some thinking about the year to come. You know, what we hope we can change, what we can achieve, what we hope to experience, and all that kind of stuff. So that, quite simply, Dan, is the plan. Does that sound good to you?
Sounds good to me, buddy.
Well, good. How you been doing?
I'm good. I'm way better now.
Why's that?
My Christmas was spent in a bed or hovering over a toilet or on a couch. My entire family was sick over Christmas.
I heard about that. That's a bummer.
Yeah.
So you recovered, though.
Right. I feel great. I feel good now. Maybe just a little tired. One more night of sleep is going to get me back to normal. But, man, I haven't puked that hard since, like, college.
And this was like a flu. It wasn't, like, too much eggnog, right?
No. This was straight up flu.
Ugh.
It was, oh, man. Like, it felt like I did 1,000 sit-ups, which, now that I say that, doesn't sound like a lot of sit-ups, but
Could you do 1,000 sit-ups straight without stopping?
Right now?
Yeah.
Oh, probably not. Not right now.
I don't know if I could either.
But
1,000's a lot of sit-ups.
I know. But in my prime, I could probably do 1,000. I could throw a football over them there mountains.
Speaking of Dan in his prime, do you ever watch any of those old Christmas movies? You know, like the kind of like old puppet types?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, do you remember? There's one of them. I can't remember the
Cornelius.
name. Yukon Cornelius. For anybody who knows what this guy looks like,
Everybody
is you,
knows. Dan. Everybody knows what he looks like, and this is probably the 15th person this year who's brought that up to me. I'm cool with it. I'm embracing the red beard.
Oh, it is you in a puppet or whatever it is. If you were plunked down to a TV, that is you. Kylie, my wife, actually told me, like, last year she noticed it. She's like, oh my gosh, that is Dan. And then someone mentioned it on Twitter, and I just cracked up.
Yeah. I definitely look like that right now. I look rough. Like, I haven't cut my beard in a long time. It's to the point now where it's not kind of growing out. It's laying down on itself.
Yeah.
So it's really hardy right now. And I haven't cut my hair in a while, so you got the little ear hangover where the hair kind of hangs over the ear just a little bit.
Yeah.
And my wife looks at me, and instead of like saying, "Oh, like good night, I love you," she said, "Ugh," So I know, I know now that it's time to maybe trim it up a bit and get a haircut.
Well, hey, you did say you didn't want any more than 2 kids, right?
That's right. That's a good idea.
So keep the beard and hair.
Look and act disgusting, and then that will get rid of one part of my life, which will lead to no more kids.
Well, I don't have those kinds of beard issues, Dan.
But hey, Mark Kenyon, aka Rookie of the Year. How is your goatee game doing these days?
The goatee game is rough. It's
Rough?
not real good. I actually
Not good?
no. I mean, I can't really grow it. But not only is it bad, because I know it's not that great, but now my wife is just fully against it. For a long time, she what's the word? She tolerated it.
Okay.
But now she actively is trying to dissuade me of having any facial hair.
Okay.
And so I shaved it all off, I don't know, a week ago or something, or a week and a half ago. And I just hate my face without it. Like it looks
Looking like a little baby.
Yeah, I feel so weird without it because it's not anything to brag about, but I've had something on my face for a long time now, and when I'm completely clean cut, I just feel like I look like a different person. Like my lips look weird. I don't know. Yeah. I literally looked in the mirror. I was like, ugh. Yeah. So
check this out. So from a fullness standpoint, I rocked a beard for a while, and I needed to have it long so it would cover up some of the patches that weren't, grown in all the way.
Yeah.
So over the past 2 years, I've been able to grow a man beard, like a really decent beard. Now, this year, I'm starting to see white hairs start coming into it. So I'm starting to get that middle-aged old man beard now.
Yeah. Yeah. Even in my little Rookie of the Year goatee, I've got some little white hairs coming in.
I know. Well, that's peach fuzz.
Well, yeah. Well,
difference.
Possibly. But hey, I killed the deer last night.
Heck yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was good.
And you stayed up. You did the shoot, drag, process, go to bed.
Yes, I did. But before we get into that whole story, I think this is probably a good place for us to take a quick break to thank our partners at Sitka Gear. And we got a Sitka story today from a Wired to Hunt listener and a fellow Sitka Whitetail ambassador, Brennan Nading. And Brennan has just recently had the week of all weeks. Last week, Monday, he killed a buck he called Turkeyfoot, who he had been watching and hunting for 2 years. And then, on his next hunt just 2 days later, he killed the other mature buck he'd been after for 2 years that he called Ronnie. So, in 3 days, you killed your top 2 bucks on this property that you've been following for at least 2 years each. How do you describe this 3 days of incredible hunting, or this season? I mean, how do you process that?
It took me a while. The best thing that could have happened that night. Shortly after I killed Ronnie, I sent out a few text messages to buddies and whatnot, and right after that, my phone crapped out on me. So I had no contact to anybody for about 15 hours, which I thought was a good thing, and it was unreal. And we spent the entire fall chasing these 2 deer, and to kill them 2 days apart in back-to-back sits, essentially, just unreal. I mean, really opened my eyes up to you can't ever count yourself out until the season's over. For it to come together was just an unreal feeling to me, and it still hasn't totally sunk in. Went home for the holidays, enjoyed time with my family, and got back down home here the other day and really just started thinking about the entire season again and how fortunate it was to end up the way it did.
A happy ending to an incredible hunting season. And I hope that's something that a lot of you can relate to at this time of year. That said, this was a Sitka story, and you can learn more about the gear like what Brennan was wearing during these hunts by visiting sitkagear.com. Moving on, we also need to thank our partners at Yeti. And that sound you're hearing, that's my Yeti Rambler filling up with coffee, and it's one of the best sounds I hear every day. Before I started using Yetis, Rambler, travel mugs, and bottles, I thought they were maybe a little overkill. Didn't know I needed, this great big stainless steel mug. But I've quickly converted, and that coffee you just heard, if I were to forget about that and come back 5 hours later, it would still be hot. And my dad, who got one of the Yeti 20-ounce tumblers, he told me over Christmas that he filled his up with ice and water at the end of one day at work, but left it on his desk overnight. And when he got back into the office the next morning, there was still ice in there. So, long story short, I've really become a fan. And if you like your coffee hot and your water icy, I'd recommend heading over to Yeti.com to learn more. And now, let's get back to the show and the story of my doe kill. Oh man, it was a long night. We've got warm temperatures and like wildly fluctuating temperatures, so I didn't want to leave it hang. I figured we're going to get it taken care of. So yeah, I think it was Tuesday night I decided to start my kind of doe hunting week. And that first night, nothing came within range. And I've been going out with my bow. But last night I went up to the same tree stand that I had a bunch of encounters with Holyfield, actually the spot where I drawn back on Holyfield. And I hadn't hunted that stand in almost 2 months, since like November 5th or something. I hadn't hunted it.
Right.
And saw tons of deer, but it was kind of a debacle of a night. Like, I've seen lots and lots of does, but at first they were moving really early, but they were all moving away from the food plot. Like, they were bedded close but moving away. And I was like, well, that's not a good sign. Did I spook them or something? They weren't spooked, but they were just kind of slowly walking away. And then I could see in my back food plot, I could see a bunch of deer feeding in there. I was like, well, I picked the wrong place tonight. And then finally, a group of does came into the plot, but one of them, now I'm having a hard time remembering, I think I drew back on her, but I can't remember exactly. And the reason I'm having a hard time to remember if I drew back or not is because I drew back a lot last night. The first group of does came in. I think I came to full draw, but just as I was doing that, she spotted me, and she bolted before I could get a shot.
Yeah.
So that was a bad situation. So they clear the field. Then, fast forward like 30 minutes or something, another group of does comes in, and I watched them for a long time, and finally the one mature doe slowly works away to 30 yards, comes from out behind these branches. I draw back. I'm like, all right, easy peasy, beautiful shot. And as I'm drawn back, and I can't really remember what happened here either, but one way or the other, I shot, and she just dropped. She jumped the string. I saw it as it was happening. I was like, that's a complete miss. Just went straight over her back, right where it was. And she went running off unscathed. So I'm like, all right, that's a great start.
So you missed?
Yeah.
Oh boy.
I mean, she dropped a foot, it looked like. I mean,
I've been there, man.
Yeah. And it was one of those things like, I've had times where I've missed a deer that I knew I missed it because I'd rushed the shot or I pulled the shot or something. This was one of those, like, I was shooting a target. It was just super easy, perfect 30-yard shot, broadside, and it just didn't happen because the target moved. So they go running off. So now I'm bummed out again. Well, I look back on the back food plot, and there's Holyfield. So I got to see Holyfield for a little bit, feeding a couple 100 yards away, which is cool. And now I see more does coming my way. And long story short, finally a few of them come into the plot. One of them looks like a shooter. She comes walking in. She gets broadside again around like 27 yards or something like that. I draw back, and just as I draw back, she turns and faces me directly on. She's feeding, but she's directly facing me. So now I'm stuck at full draw. She doesn't move for what seems like 30 seconds, 45 seconds. So I'm at full draw, shaking. Finally, I'm like, all right, I just need to draw down. And there was another younger deer like closer to me, so I was worried they were going to hear me, but finally I draw down. They don't know what's going on. I'm watching them, and finally she turns, she moves, she walks out, and as she's walking across my one opening, I'm getting ready to draw, she sees me. And this tree that I'm in is really not a good late. It's okay. Like, I got away with more than I thought I would last night because it's a great spot early in the year when there's leaves on this tree. It's an oak tree, lots of leaf cover, lots of branches all around me. It's pretty darn good. But right now there's no leaves at all, and it's out in the middle of a field. It's a lone tree in the middle of this plot. So because of that, there is a decent amount of cover, but still they could see you if they were coming from the right angle. If there's the right perspective for them, my silhouette would be up there. And so she walked right to that one spot where, she might see something. And she kind of looked up and was like, And I'm like, son of a gun, is this going to happen twice in a row now today?
Right.
But she didn't. She's just like, I don't know what that is, but I'm okay. And then she walked another 5 yards, stopped. And this one, put the pin on her just like I did the first one. And this doe did not jump the string. And I double lunged her. She ran 50 yards and dropped, and that was it, right in the food plot. So
nice.
So that was the night, and I got her gutted and hung her up and skinned and took her apart, and then my wife and I worked throughout the evening butchering her and started to package a little bit of it, and it was just a long, long night, but it felt good to have been able to do that and put some more meat in the freezer. So nice. I'm a happy hunter.
So you processed it all yourself?
We did, yes.
Nice. Cool. Yeah, man, I know how you feel. I came to full draw once on a doe, and as I was drawing back, I don't know if you may cut a branch, but you don't cut it all the way, and it just kind of hangs on the side of the tree. Well, I drew back, my elbow hit the branch that I did like this really half-ass cut on. It fell out of the tree and went down, and the doe was at full alert looking right at me. And she was probably only 25 yards, and I watched her, basically her chest hit the ground to avoid the arrow. I mean, that's how. So I've been there when they jump the string like that.
Yeah, it's crazy. I've gone back and watched video of some of these shots of deer that I've seen that have jumped the string on me, and it's crazy how fast they can drop that much. I mean, 12 inches easy in like a split second.
Yep. So
it's hard to accommodate for. I try when I'm thinking about it. If I think that deer is on alert, I try to aim maybe at the bottom third of the kill zone, but sometimes that's not even good enough. So nonetheless, clean miss on the first one, which I was happy it wasn't a bad shot, and then a quick kill on the final one. So I've got 2 more doe tags now, and I'm gonna try to get out here a couple more nights before the end of the year, and put another one in the freezer maybe, and my sister-in-law would like some venison, so I'm going to give some to her, and should be a good way to wrap it up.
That's right.
So now I want to talk about 2016 here today, Dan, about some of our lessons learned, some of our, what we're happy with, what we weren't. But at the end of our conversation last week, you told me that you had not hunted once since November 3rd, and I was going to give you a hard time about that, and I just want to make sure I did that right now. So now I'm giving you a hard time about that.
Okay, good. Thank you.
WTF.
I know. I have...
Excuses?
No, well, I do have excuses. My kids were vomiting all over the place, and I was vomiting, and, holiday season, blah, blah, blah. But I got approval tomorrow night, which is Friday, or whatever. I don't know when you're going to launch this, but Friday, the 30th, I think it is, I am going out and I'm going hunting.
Good.
I'm going to be in a tree stand close to a food plot. It's going to be warm. Don't know what kind of movement I'm going to see, but I'm going to set up on the first well-used trail and just wait for a doe to come by and, try to, I don't know, shoot her, get some meat.
Yeah. Do you remember what to do in that situation?
I don't even know. It's been a long time.
It's been 2 months.
I know. It's like I'm going to have to teach myself how to set up my tree stands again and how to set up. But no, man, I'm really looking forward to getting out there. And this food source is kind of the only food source really in the area. You got to go a ways down to get to an actual big ag field. So I'm pretty I know I'm going to see deer. I don't know what kind of bucks I'm going to see. However, I'm not really after any particular buck. I checked trail cameras last weekend with my buddy and on my buddy's piece, and there was one maybe mature buck. He could be a 4-year-old. He was kind of far away. Got 1 or 2 pictures of him, but nothing promising. So I'll go on doe patrol and see if I can't get a little more freezer meat myself.
Now, is it still muzzleloader season for you guys out there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So I can get another buck tag, and I can get another buck tag if I want to. or shoot another buck if I want to, because I can get that late season muzzleloader tag, but I can use a bow for it. So that's what I'll be doing. You know, if a big boy or a mature buck does step by, I'll definitely shoot him, but or take a shot at him, but I'm not holding my breath.
Gotcha. Now, yeah, what were you gonna say?
Now, late next week, there is a big cold front coming through Iowa. So these higher than normal temperatures are going to drop down to below normal temperatures. So we're going to be in the teens for next weekend, and the weekend of like the 5th and 6th or whatever.
Nice.
And I am going to go to a spot where I feel that this buck I call Tupac lives. And I hit him in 2013, never recovered him. 14, 15, 16.
I don't know how this deer is still around.
Yeah. I think he was a 4-year-old, so 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old. He's probably a 7-year-old this year.
That's incredible.
And but he's a stud, man. I mean, he's just a typical 10-pointer. Maybe last year I think he was bigger than he was this year, but he'll be like in the 160s, I think. So he's
what's the setup? Why do you think he's going to be in this area, and what's it look like?
So it's one of those things. Every once in a while, you have an aha moment about what these deer are doing, maybe as far as a pattern is concerned. And I was always focused on this particular area where I get summer trail camera pictures of him as his summer range, right? So then there would be a period of time where he would disappear. So I'd pull my trail cameras, and then the crops would come out, and then then it's basically a wide open cornfield with a couple buffer strips, and then just like fingers of timber, no real big timber that you would think. Well, this year I'm like, I'm going to see what kind of deer are working this field, and Tupac was working this field the entire rut.
Really?
So he's living in this area all year round, or I shouldn't say all year, but he's there summer, and he was there when I put my trail cameras back up the first part of November in this area. And then I killed my deer. So then I left, and I let that set for like 4 weeks. And so this entire area, I got him on 2 of the 3 trail cameras on this field. And I think I know now where he's kind of bedding and living. So I'm going to try to set up on as close as humanly possible to that without jumping deer out of there. And because I think what happens is during shotgun season, a lot of deer pile into these fingers just because nobody really thinks to hunt them, because they're, I don't know,
Yep.
they just typically don't hold deer. Like the farmer dumps old refrigerators and deep freezes in one of these draws. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's just not what people would think. But I put the trail cameras up, and sure enough, I had like 3 shooters come through there. So I'm gonna pay a little bit more attention to that this late season for maybe 1 or 2 hunts, and then that's all I'm gonna get. But then definitely next year.
Well, that's exciting.
Yeah, for sure. Piece of the puzzle, you know?
Heck yeah. Like I'm kind of pumped for you right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I don't have any information because I've taken my trail cameras down since then, but there's always a chance that there's something in these fingers. You know, it's a picked egg field. It is a cattle pasture, and then they're on these low spots where the fence runs through to divide the 2 properties are trees, and that's where these deer have been bedding. I've found sheds there over the years, nothing giant, but it's just I'm going to get as high as I can in a good observation point and see what's up.
So I was just going to ask, are you going to try to push right into the good stuff, or are you going to observe that first night and then try to see something and attack? Because that sounds like that's the plan.
Right. I'm going to be aggressive, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk the fence. I'm going to walk this fence line up to where I find a decent crossing coming out of this real thicket to this small little thicket to the ag fields where they could potentially be bedding. And I'm going to get as high as I can, and not necessarily try to conceal myself, but just get as high so I can see as much land as possible, but put myself in a position where if something does come through, I'll be able to take a shot at it, some well-used path.
Mm-hmm.
And then if I see something, I have one day to make an adjustment, and then it's going to be, go big or go home.
Yeah. Well, hey, it's fun that there's at least a shot of something happening.
Right. And I also have 2 deer tags down there, 2 doe tags yet to fill. So I'm not going to be picky as far as I'm not going to be holding out for a mature buck, because I want to fill my doe tags too.
Well, cool, man. Well, I'm excited to hear how that goes. Hopefully, either you shoot something or you learn something, and like you said, apply it to next year. And
right,
shoot, man,
for sure.
Next year is going to be here in just a couple days. Can you believe that?
I know. I'm already thinking. And I know you are too, man. I know a lot of guys are.
Yeah, for sure. But I guess with that said, should we first look back on this year that's just wrapping up for both of us? I know you've got a little bit more season left than I do, but in short, in general, most of our seasons are either done or are getting done. So I don't know about you, but I've definitely been doing some thinking. One word: how would you describe your 2016 season?
One word?
Or one sentence? Or
one sentence?
I don't know.
While I think about that, I'm gonna pass it right back to you. Okay, one term or word or sentence to describe your season.
I was hoping I'd have more time to think about this because I hadn't thought about it either.
I got it.
Yeah.
Mine will be satisfying.
Satisfying.
Right.
I like it.
For me, I killed a buck this year, and I was very happy to do it. But I wasn't like blown away as this is one of the greatest seasons I've ever had. I didn't hunt as much because I tagged out, so I felt I'm going to save my vacation and I'm going to go home. I was satisfied. I was happy with the results. It wasn't like the greatest season I've ever had. It wasn't the worst season I've ever had. It was right in the middle. I'm so happy to have hunted it, but I'm really looking forward to the shed season and 2017.
Nice. Okay, I got mine.
Now it's yours. Okay, good.
Eye-opening.
Eye-opening.
And that's that's hyphenated, so one word. That's the writer in me that has to clarify. And I say that because I think that there were a lot of things for me this season that were like maybe enlightening is the better word, but one of the two that kind of like just brought to light something new. Like I feel like I learned a lot of things. Like I made a shift this year as a hunter, evolved in a bunch of different ways. That I think we could talk about here. We've talked about a little bit in the past, but in a number of different things, I've kind of changed. So I think this season kind of signified that move for me, which was interesting, and I learned a lot from it. And I can look back on a lot of things from this season, like totally different things, and see like, wow, that was like a really cool new thing I tried, and like that really changed me. And this was something that was a big challenge, and I learned something from it, and that changed. And so it definitely was like a different kind of season for me. It wasn't one that like followed the script and I killed a bunch of big bucks and it was like yippee. It was one that was like punctuated by these different highs and lows, but lots of new stuff that was really cool. So it was a great hunting season. But just like you, it just kind of leaves me wanting more. Like I'm ready for the next year to just start right now. So
what was what were a couple of your highlights for 2016?
So I think I'd say probably the highlights of my season were three things. Number one for sure was my trip to Montana. That was like one of my favorite hunting trips ever. Maybe my favorite hunting trip ever. For a lot of different reasons. I mean, just like being out there in that type of place was just like, it's unlike anywhere else I've ever deer hunted. Just being out in this huge, wide open, beautiful landscape with so few people, and hunting public land. And like, it wasn't the kind of thing where, you know, I was hunting and then going hanging out at home or hanging out at a hotel. You know, it was like a total experience from all day, every day for 7 days or whatever it was that I was out there. I was either hunting or planning about hunting or sleeping in my truck or cooking food on a little backpacking stove on the tailgate. It was just an awesome experience all the way around.
Right.
So that was just a huge highlight for sure. I think another highlight was just this hunt for Holyfield.
Right.
Excuse me. Just getting to see this buck as much. Like, this was one of those things that definitely stands out, and I don't want to, belabor the point too much, but getting to learn and observe a deer the way I did and hunt for a deer the way I did for Holyfield this year was definitely unique and above and beyond anything I've ever experienced before. So that has been a highlight, just getting to see that deer so many times and everything else that went through it. And then another highlight was getting to be there when my dad killed a buck this year during gun season in Michigan. That was really cool to get to share that with him.
Right.
And that was super exciting. So I'd say those are my 3 highlights. I also killed a doe last night, which was great. I killed a buck in Ohio, which was great. Lots of great moments, but I think those 3 stand out above everything else, at least at first glance. What about you?
Oh, man. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is the actual kill I had this year. It felt good to get, I've always been kind of picky in what I kill. I'm not going to settle, as far as bucks are concerned, I'm not settling for anything really than what I kind of put my mind out to. So I've eaten tag soup quite a few times over the last 10 years. So it felt good to actually seal the deal, put the period at the end of the sentence, the cherry on top, and come through with a kill and do it kind of the way I always have tried to do it. And that's recon with trail cameras, check the trail cameras, make sure that the deer are in there, and then use what I've learned over the years as a bow hunter to put together a game plan to move in this area and hunt it without, go into this buck's living space basically and kill him without him noticing me or busting me. So I got to do that. And, that strategy that we have, that we all try to put together to accomplish our goals worked for me. So that's kind of like the second thing, but all of everything coming together finally and working. That made me happy. That chess game, winning that chess game on a mature buck definitely made me happy. And like I said, the kill was just extra.
Yeah, it's the whole chess match is awesome, but you got to win every once in a while too,
exactly,
to feel okay about the fact that you're making progress on it.
Right. So other than that, I think 2016 was one of those seasons, and I'm sure a lot of guys go through that once you've been hunting. And just to reiterate, man, it wasn't my best season, most memorable. It will be, because I'm going to have a mount on my wall to always say, hey, look, man, I shot this deer. I didn't get the opportunity to hunt the rut where I'm seeing, tons of deer chasing and all that stuff. For me, it was an in and out type of season. And so I'm just blessed that I got to do that. I'm blessed that I got to spend some additional time with my family that time of year and do some, different things outside while the weather was good. And, blessed that my wife puts up with my crap and allows me to do what I love to do. And, yeah, man, just happy that I have mature deer to hunt.
Yeah, for sure. Is there anything you wish you'd done differently?
Well, looking back on it, maybe, but not being the person who regrets things. I've only had a very small handful of regrets in my life. But there's the small little voice inside of me that wishes I would have maybe passed this buck and allowed myself more time in the timber but I think that's the guy who likes to sit in the tree stand, right? That's his voice. The guy who is a nature lover, who just likes to be outside and who loves that grind, right? But then there's the killer part of me who was like, hey man, you got to shoot this buck. It's your goal. You said 4-year-old or older, you got to shoot this buck. And that's what I did. And I was happy with that. Do I wish I could have hunted more? Yes. But there might be, talk to me about what I'm talking about now when we start talking about 2017, because there's a transition there, but I don't want to go there yet.
So let me make sure I get this right. You asked me to talk to you about what you're talking about when we start talking about, right?
Nailed it. There we go. Right now, people are slowly clicking the X button on their computers and going, God, this podcast, do I need to know math?
I think that happened way earlier than that, dude.
No, but like just being able to extend my hunting season, so to speak.
Yeah. What about tactic-wise? Now, not necessarily would you do anything differently, but did anything you see this year or that you tried and maybe it worked or didn't work, did you learn anything?
I stayed out, man. This year was one of the very first years where if I wanted to hunt, I had locations where I didn't touch until it was time. Like some of my best stands, I didn't even hunt at all this year because I wasn't going to go in until the time was right. And so I didn't hunt those areas at all. And I did that outside in, set up the observation stands, move in. I did that 2 times and I killed my buck this year. So I set up my observation stand, adjusted once and killed a buck. So that's what that was this year. But I mean, if I wanted to go hunt a doe, I went to a completely different location.
Yeah.
So I stayed out of what I considered my hot spots for the rut.
Yeah. I think, that's the kind of stuff that we talk about all the time. So it's cool to see that you were able to put that into play and it paid off.
Yep. And there's a chance that next year I hunt less, even less than, because I'm finding, and some of these guys who talk about, man, I don't even hit the woods until the 5th of November. That to me sounds absolutely crazy, but they're right. I feel they are so right.
Yeah. Hunting smart over hunting hard. Although the perfect scenario is to do both, to have enough places that you can hunt hard. You can hunt other places where you won't impact the spots you want to hold off on. That's what, for me, one of my big things that I continue to learn and continue to be reminded of is the importance of just having more and more places because, options. Yeah. Because just like you said, I put such a huge premium on keeping my best spots untouched until the right time. Timing. We talk about almost every episode, every guest we talk about in some different way, they are focusing on keeping pressure low until the time is right. That right there is like the biggest thing when it comes to hunting mature bucks, I think. Like if you get that into your head and all these, there's obviously lots of other things that fall underneath that, but if you can figure out how to keep pressure low until the right time and then even have pressure low while you're actually there hunting on those right times, that's a huge game changer. And
that's right.
I think you can take that one of two ways. You could take it, as you just said, where you just don't hunt very much, which is okay if you're okay with having a few hunts but being successful on those few hunts. But then if you're somebody who wants to just still be able to go out and hunt, you want to have places you can go on those subpar days. And, I found even on, this year I picked up permission on a new place, and I went and hunted there on the weekends and the days when I didn't want to hunt in my best spots because the conditions weren't right. It was warm weather, or the wind wasn't going to be good, or whatever. All these different things didn't line up. So I was like, well, I'll go there, and I'll still get to hunt. And lo and behold, even though the conditions weren't great, I was hunting some of these spots for the first time ever, and I had, let me think about this. I had encounters with shooters 3 times in a row on subpar days that I wouldn't hunt my best spots because I didn't think the conditions weren't great. But I was like, I'm going to try somewhere brand new. And I snuck into some spots and just kind of did observation sits in this new property. And, sometimes you do get lucky. And that was one of the situations where you're not going to get lucky if you're not out there. So I'd like to, I play it really smart, conservative, and strategic on my best spots. But then I have the opportunity to get lucky on the subpar days in my, spots C, D, E, F.
Right.
If you don't have those spots, you're not going to kill anything on the couch on those subpar days.
Now, let's elaborate on that a little bit, if you don't mind. What you did there, and kind of what I did there as well, was you were aggressive on other areas, right? So what you've done is you've moved into some of these better locations on different farms, which you didn't really know what you were going to see, what was there. I really didn't know what was hanging out in these areas. I just knew that my good stands were getting rest, right? So now what you've done is you've educated yourself that, hey, maybe next year this area could be my new A, B, or C stand. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
So you've educated yourself on, improving your odds of killing a mature buck.
For sure. Yeah. And I think what's kind of nice about those types of extra properties, I've got my properties that I'm depending on,
Right.
that I'm like, okay, this is where I'm probably going to get it done, where I have confidence in it, and where I'm going to play all the cards just right. And so I don't take high risks there because I know if I play it smart, I can succeed. But then having those extra properties where the risk isn't as high because you're not really depending on it, having those spots, not only is it nice because you can hunt more, but just like you said, it's a testing ground. It's where you can go out there and try new things or push it or get a little more aggressive, and you don't need to be worried about screwing up your whole hunting season because you've got your old dependables, but here's where you can push the line a little bit, and maybe you get lucky, maybe you don't, but you're definitely going to learn from that.
Take those principles, those aggressive principles, and apply them to your A, B, and C stands.
Yes.
Then that's when you become successful.
Yeah, that's a huge thing for me this year.
Right.
Was just having more options to push into try new things and to get aggressive, but not be screwing up my good spots. That was a big thing for me this year. Whether that be when I was hunting public land, early this year, that was totally new, and because of the fact that it was a quick trip and public, I knew I was just gonna have to push it. I tried to play it smart at first, observe, and then push. And I did that, and that was awesome. I learned stuff from that. And then here in Michigan, I had my dependable couple properties that I wanted to play safe on, and then I had a couple new spots where I was like, you know what? I'm going to try stuff. And I did. And I think because of that now, like you were saying, next year I'm going to go into the scenario with some new dependable spots or some new ideas that I think, okay, I'm going to play it smart here because I think I can get it done based on what I learned. And so what that means is now, I want to keep on trying to find additional new places to just keep on building up that portfolio of spots that I can either depend on or try out new, or at least have places to hunt, whether that be private or public. But, without getting ahead of ourselves in 2017 too much, that's definitely another lesson learned for me is you can never have enough places to hunt.
Right. And then what you have here is over the years, you generate all these different properties where you have access to hunt, whether they're 2 acres or they're 200 acres. Now what you have is like we talked about, is options, and options not about land, but about the quality of bucks that you're chasing too. So, for 2-3 years, you're shooting a 3-year-old, then you say to yourself, man, okay, my goal is going to be a 4-year-old. Well, you have the property, you've put out the trail cameras, or you've done your homework, or however you do your pre-season scouting to determine what your goal is. Then you can just leave other properties alone. And like me, over the years, the properties that I thought were good, I don't even hunt. There's properties that I have access to that I don't even hunt anymore.
Right. Yeah. And I think this applies, also to public land, which was another big thing for me this year. Going on that trip to Montana and totally spending my time on public land out there was something I'd wanted to do going into this year. Like I was kind of inspired last spring to take more of an effort to hunt public land, and I had so much fun with that, and just the idea of it kind of like captivated me, that's something that moving forward I'm going to try to continue doing, because it's a playground for trying new things, and it's an inherently different challenge too. And I think because of that, you can have a level of satisfaction in that challenge, and at least taking on that challenge, that might be different than hunting a totally managed farm. Hunting my manicured, managed, only me hunting a property, I might be disappointed if I don't shoot the 4-year-old or whatever it might be. But hunting public land, just having an encounter with a 3-year-old would be like, oh, that was awesome.
Right.
So I think that was a big thing that I learned, is just that public land is available and it's a lot of fun. So I plan on doing more of that. I don't know. Another thing, this is totally unrelated. But another thing, let me take a step back. Do you have anything more on that? Because I was about to totally move on to something totally different that just popped in my head.
Well, let's move on to something totally different, because I think I've said all I needed to say.
So I was just going to continue moving on to some of the other lessons that I kind of picked up or was reminded of this year.
Okay.
And I talked about this a lot throughout the season. I mentioned that I was doing this a lot, but it was just it was a change I made this year that made one of the biggest differences in my season compared to past, and that was my exit strategy out of tree stands.
Okay.
And I know that my situation was unique because not everybody has a wife who would be willing to pick them up.
Right.
But by having my wife drive my ATV out and pick me up from these evening sits made a night and day difference in the type of activity I have continued to see throughout the season. So I'm going to do everything I can to stay in the good graces of that woman so that she will do this for me in the future. And if you don't have a wife who might be able to do that, pay a friend or buy a buddy some beer or save his life so he owes you. Find out some way, if you can, if you hunt a property that's conducive to this, find a way to get those places cleared out in the evening and get yourself picked up so you're not spooking deer on the way out. Because at least, now this isn't the case for all properties, because some properties you can sneak out through the timber where there's no deer at all, and it's fine. I've got some spots I hunt like that too. But this Michigan property, to get out of that property, you have to go through food sources or near food sources. And so for years and years and years, I was spooking deer every single night when I came out. And I tried to change my exit route. I cut a path through some tall grass that I thought might still, save me, but I was still spooking deer. And you would just see it. You would see the activity decline every hunt, even though I did everything else right. And this year, with the ATV thing, we talked about it. I just do not think I would be seeing Holyfield as daylight active as he is over and over and over and over if he had seen me walking out. And then I know he would have if I was walking out some of these nights, or at least all these does would. And that just hasn't been the case. I've been able to avoid that. I don't think I've spooked deer physically with my own, me walking out or stepping out, climbing out of a tree stand more than maybe once this season, as I'm trying to think of this off the top of my head, compared to, I'm sure many other times in the past. So that's something that, we know it, we talk about it all the time, entry and exit's important, but this was one of those eye-opening examples where I made a significant change and it made a significant difference in what I saw. And that was just a big aha for me. And, it's not possible for everybody to have that, but man, it sure was worthwhile if you can try to finagle something like that.
Right. Hey man, this year I watched a bedded two-year-old, maybe a 3-year-old, just not even move when a guy started combining his corn. So, and he was probably, I'd say 100 yards off the cornfield. We were sitting at a triangle. Let's just use a triangle as an example. One point was the combine guy, one point was me, and another point was the bedded buck. And he didn't even move. He didn't even look like he was paying attention to it. So that tells you right there that they're not, depending on where you are in the country, they're not going to be spooked by that at all. Now, in Kansas, where my uncle hunts, any car, any truck, they're gone because so many people shoot out of their windows down in his area. But for me, I've noticed that, what you're saying is true to case.
Yeah. And even in these cases, you are spooking the deer. It's better to spook the deer in a vehicle than as a person, because they're used to a vehicle that's something like, okay, that I don't want to be near it, but it's not going to scare the crap out of me. I'll come back out in 20 minutes. Versus a human being walking by, that's not supposed to be there. So I think even getting spooked by a vehicle or an ATV is a better spook than seeing a human being out there. So it's a simple thing, but that one made a big difference. But anything else this year? Anything else on 2016 that you think we should talk about for your season or my season or anything?
Well, you know how last year they logged that property, and I was very disappointed with, they were in there in October, and then the rut sucked because all the deer were pushed out by the time they were done logging. This year it recovered, and I've noticed some serious, even in this 8-month period, really good growth hit that forest floor, or sunlight hit that forest floor. Some of these weeds started growing up thick and nasty. So I'm really excited for even next year, where some of the areas are even more thick and nasty. So I can see where some of this timber stand improvement, letting some of these dropping some trees and letting some light get to the forest floor could improve your deer herd numbers.
Oh heck yeah. It improves the cover, improves food.
Right.
Man, that kind of stuff is great. And that actually kind of leads me to some of my thoughts for 2017. Because there's a lot of stuff I've already been thinking about, like all the different changes I want to make, whether it be with my strategy or to properties. Because 2017 is going to be a big year. But you know what? Do you realize that we have just about finished up our 3rd hunting season together as co-hosts on this podcast?
I know, man. I was thinking about that the other day. I don't know. I love talking about this. It doesn't even seem like we've been doing it this long, because I have so much fun doing it.
Yeah. We've told a lot of stories. I've got a lot of hunting buddies, but I think given this podcast, I don't think anybody I don't think I've talked to anybody about my hunting season more than you.
Well, remember, we have thousands and thousands of listeners who listen to this podcast, so you're not just talking to me.
That's a good point. Didn't think about that.
Right.
But you're the only one who talks back, at least nicely.
Right.
So 2017, man, you excited? Actually, don't answer that, Dan. Let's take a second for our last break today to thank our partners at Maven Optics. And Maven is a small, high-end optics company that not only produces the best set of binoculars I've ever owned, but it's also a company that has a story that I just love. And one of Maven's co-founders, Brendan Weaver, chatted with me earlier this year about what it felt like to have this dream of creating and selling better binoculars and optics in a just wildly different way, and actually see that dream come to fruition.
That's crazy. Having worked for a big corporation, it's like it never feels personal. Even though if you make something, you draw it up, and that's what I do, the design work. You draw something up, and then you see it on the shelf. There were always so many more, opinions that went into it. Oh, we can't use that color because such and such store doesn't like that color. But when it's completely yours and you see it go from, like you said, that conversation around the campfire to that first order, it was pretty special. You hope a ton of sales follow, but it's like, hey man, we sold one, it works. It's high five. Luckily for us, it didn't just end at selling our first binocular, but yeah, it was pretty, and we live in a tiny town in Wyoming, and so it's pretty cool to compete against these big players in the optics world. And we're, right now we're 4 guys. We just hired our first employee in January, so it was just 3 of them working here in Lander, and so that's a pretty big deal here. It was special when that happened.
That's awesome. And I got to say, if you're in the market for a new set of binos or a spotting scope, Maven is an option that you just got to check out. So if you're interested, you can fully customize and buy directly from Maven by visiting mavenbuilt.com. And with that, let's get back to the show and Dan's thoughts on 2017.
You have no idea. Like, I'm excited on so many different levels. I'm so excited for it that it's hard for me to, okay, so check this out. They say that the average guy thinks about sex like once every like 15 seconds or whatever that number is.
Okay,
right?
sure.
So now add deer hunting and plans for 2017 into that. Like, so all I'm doing about now, I feel like, is thinking about sex and deer hunting. Like, I'm not even thinking about anything else.
Don't forget to take a crap and eat some food every once in a while, though, too.
Right.
But you got the important stuff covered, so you're gonna be okay this year. You're gonna be all right.
Right.
I'm pumped too. I'm super pumped too. It's
it's the decision you made to pass Holyfield and not to like go after him anymore is just a trail leading right into 2017.
Oh, I know, and it's got me. See, and I don't want to talk about this too much because I think we've talked about it so much, but I felt so good just making that decision because of this excitement I knew I was going to have for 17. And I think if I had shot Holyfield, it would have been great, but I would have entered this new year, with hardly as much to be excited about. There's no other bucks on this property that I would be interested in hunting that I've seen. There's nothing I have history with left. There wouldn't be this history that I've come to find is so, interesting and fun to add to a hunt. And now, I don't know. Last night, I'm being overly paranoid here, but last night, like I told you, I saw him, and it's bow season only for bucks right now. But there is a late doe season going on with firearms, so you could shoot a doe with a gun, but you can only shoot a buck with a bow. Well, last night I'm watching Holyfield a couple 100 yards away, and then eventually, I don't know, like 5 o'clock or something, he goes feeding off into the timber, but heading towards the south, kind of towards a neighboring property. And maybe half hour later or something, I heard a huge old gunshot that had to be next door, or very nearby. One of the neighboring properties, somebody shot a deer over there. And I would like to think that, they just shot a doe, but the fact that I'd seen Holyfield walking that direction, now he would still have been, hundreds of yards away from that property or farther away. So I know it's unlikely that someone's going to illegally shoot this buck. It's unlikely he even made it over there, but it's still like I got concerned. But assuming that didn't happen, he makes it through these next couple nights. It happened.
Yep.
I've got 3 more days left of the season, and the fact that he made it this far, I think it just was proof again to me myself, just that I made the right decision. And man, I'm so pumped to get out there and look for sheds. It's going to be like the shed hunting Super Bowl for me. There's never been a buck, I think, to this point that I would have wanted to find his sheds as much as this one. So super stoked about that. And then, I've already been thinking through all sorts of ideas about what I want to do differently hunting him next year, what I learned from this year. And what's been kind of cool about this deer is because I've had so many encounters, so many pictures, just the number of data points I have that I can kind of plug into this whole formula of trying to figure out. I have an immense amount of data. So I just love, you and I both, we love looking at all this stuff and thinking about, okay, what's the pattern here? Why did he go here then? Why did he move this way then? I've got so many different pieces I can look at now that I can't tell you if I'll figure anything out, but I'll at least have fun trying to, which I think is half of it, or more than that half of it. So I know that I'm going to be, just studying my deer lab and my little notebook I have with every single encounter I have with him, where he was, the wind direction. I'm going to start pulling in the moon phase and barometric pressure into that log, and then I have to just try to extrapolate some type of learning from this. And I thought I'd learned some things about him from last year to this year, and I made some changes. And still, I had some close calls. I was definitely seeing him, but I never quite was able to close the deal. So now in 2017, I'm like, okay, now I want to tweak this. I'm going to pull back here. I'm going to push here. I I want to try to make some property improvements.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things on this property is that he doesn't seem to bet on the farm and hunt a lot. He seems to, there's one little spot that he beds occasionally, but it seems like he's betting on neighboring properties a little bit more. I think the one reason why I was getting the potential to get shots, the one chance I could have shot him with a muzzleloader the other day, and now in the late season a lot, has been because of the food sources I put in. So the food has been very, very, very important. So I want to make sure, what can I do to improve those food sources even more, and to change the times of year he's in there, or improve the amount of time he's in there. And I'm thinking, like, where can I improve cover? How can I get him to bed on my property more often? How can I get him to come over the property line a little bit further so he might be in range and feel more comfortable? So I'm thinking about how can I extend cover onto my side of the line, maybe push my food plots deeper into my property instead of closer to property borders. I don't know. There's a whole bunch of stuff like that I'm starting to just like brainstorm about. That, how can I just slim the odds a little bit more in my favor? I'm just going to kind of, in 2017, my goal on this property where he is to take everything I've been doing and just crank up the level of detail even more. So I'm going to go back to every one of my tree stands that I've hunted this year, and I'm going to add cover to all of them. I'm going to, if I need to shift 4 feet over, I'm going to do it this year. I'm going to, just because I've invested so much in this hunt, and I'm so excited to hopefully be able to hunt him in 2017. I don't want to leave any stone unturned. So I'm going to go into this, and this all going to be spring. I'm going to have everything done by like April. My goal is this year. So
I think you said that last year too.
Well, I did better last year, but this year I'm going to do really good.
Okay.
This year's going to be much better. But you're right. Every year in the winter we have these grand ideas,
right?
But I have to follow through this year even more completely. So I know I'm going to be going into next year, assuming I get pictures of here in the next couple days. He's still alive. Hopefully, it's going to be a new level of excitement that I don't think I've had on this specific place before, which I'm really pumped about. So I don't know. Yeah, property adjustments. The one other thing when it comes to that hunt, and I'm skipping ahead maybe in how I thought we were going to talk about this stuff, but I'm kind of getting into some of the things I want to change for next year and some of like my New Year's resolutions. And so one of my big resolutions is just to take, like I just said, I'm taking everything up a notch on this property. But not only with, tweaking stands and food plots and adding more cover and all that kind of stuff, but also with my timing. And I'm obsessive about my timing. We talk about this all the time. I try to be really careful, but this year, and we talked about this a touch, but I think, I went in with the original goal of hunting him the first couple nights of the season and then staying out until like the beginning of the pre-rut. So staying out until late October.
Right.
But because of these cold fronts that were coming through, and because of one sighting and a couple trail camera pictures I got of him that indicated that he was moving in daylight a little bit, I kept hunting throughout October. So I hunted the first weekend, and then I hunted the second weekend, and then I hunted the third weekend. And I kept doing it and telling myself, well, you're doing it because he was daylight active a couple 100 yards from here, or you saw him one night. And all that, I think in most instances usually is a good sign and reason to go hunt. But on the other hand, I think to myself, if I had just let it go, even though I got a picture of him on the 15th in daylight, even though I saw him in daylight on the 8th, way off in the distance, he wasn't moving a ton during daylight at that time of year. If I had waited until October 25th to hunt there again, I bet you he would have been much more likely to be within range when I finally did go in to hunt him on the 25th or the 30th or the 3rd, rather than what the situation was, which was when I went and hunted him on the after I'd hunted him the 8th, 9th, and the 16th, and the 20th, and the 24th, and the 25th, and the 27th, and the 28th, and the 30th, and the 31st. I saw him some of those times, but he was always out of range. He was always back in the cover. And I think if I had been a little bit more careful and resisted the urge to hunt, I think maybe he would have been within range on my side of the line a couple of those times. So this year I think I'm going to attack early like I planned, but then resist the temptation to go full bore until he who knows? Things might change, but I'm going to try, and at least I'm going to be going into the season thinking about the idea of laying off him completely again until he gets ruddy. Because when he got ruddy, he was very vulnerable, I think. He was just vulnerable in the wrong places for me. And if I'd been a little bit careful, I think he maybe would have been a little bit more within my reach. And then secondly, you know, the other thing is that once he did get ruddy and once he was really active and I was seeing him every day, there was a couple times there where I saw him move somewhere and I could have hunted it, and I didn't move to hunt there because I thought the spot looked stupid. And I was like, that seems like a dumb place. I don't think I'll ever go there again. But if I had moved, I would have killed him the next day. And then I was like, well, and I didn't move. And then he scooted out there one more time. And so there was 2 times where I could have believed my eyes and made the adjustment, but I didn't. So next year, I'm going to have a stand in this spot where I wish I would have. And then I'm also not going to be afraid to make, you know, and I think every year we talk about this, and every year I get a little better. Like, I was definitely more aggressive in different places this year in certain ways. But I think there's, you know, it's constantly figuring out where's the line. There's always that balance beam you have to walk in between being conservative and being careful and not putting pressure unduly versus knowing when to take the jump. And I'm constantly getting better at that, but I think this year I know I can take one more step now.
Right. Yeah. That's I almost feel that same way. However, I think for a guy like me and you who look at the data that you had, and what I mean by data is trail camera pictures and sightings, I don't think you really made a mistake on Holyfield. Well, to the point where I feel that that because he was out of range, that wasn't necessarily because you screwed it up.
Fair enough. I mean, I always had a good reason to go hunt. I will say that. Like, every night that I went in there, I could justify it to myself, which is why I kept doing it. Like, I was, okay, the second weekend, I'm only going to hunt now because there's a 15-degree temperature drop, and I saw him in daylight, you know, on camera 3 days ago, and the bear match. So I was like, okay, I know I didn't want to do this. This wasn't in the plan, but X, Y, and Z are really making me think you should, and so I went. So yeah, I don't know. I thought I had a good reason to do it whenever I did, but you know, I never did have him in range except for that one time. So yeah, I mean, it could have been unlucky, and I did everything that I could have done right, and the opportunity just didn't present itself. And I don't mean to, you know, it is what it is, but my property just is not, you know, it's a secondary property compared to where he's hanging out most of the time. So if I could hunt this other property, really another property and a half, like, holy smokes, like, I feel like this would have been game over, but I'm kind of stuck hunting the edge, and I'm trying to make the best of it. Probably not the best idea, but thanks for the tip.
Yeah. Don't listen to me.
No, I typically don't, but but yeah, you know, it's, you know, making the most of what I got. But I definitely have wrestled with what you just said. Like, did I make a mistake? Did I not make a mistake? I don't know. But I don't know. When it's all said and done, I will have learned something from this.
Right.
I can't quite put my finger on exactly what the lesson is. I'm trying to, like, kind of figure it out still. But it's been an interesting experience, that's for sure.
Well, I hope it all works out, man.
Yeah, me too. What about you? What that's one of the things I'm going to 2017 wanting to do. There's a couple more things, but what do you got? Any big resolutions? Any big changes?
I got a handful of things, right? This first one sounds really cliche, but I mean, you see those guys on Instagram, and they're lifting weights, and they're, you know, like, oh, I'm an athletic hunter. I do CrossFit, and I do all these things, and it helps me hunt. Well, this sounds cliche, but I'm going on an elk hunt in Colorado this next year, and I want to be in the best possible shape that I can be in. So that means I'm going to have to change my diet, and I'm going to have to work out really hard this spring, this summer, leading up into September. So that's the first kind of New Year's resolution. I know I trained hard. I thought I trained pretty hard going into our Idaho trip that one year, and it still kicked my butt.
Yeah.
So granted, there's not a lot you can do when I live at 400 feet sea level and I'm trying to hunt in 9,000 feet, right? There's no way to really simulate that or train that. But I felt that there was more things I could do for my cardio. There was more things I could do for the way that I trained, my diet. I had a real shitty diet. So I'm going to really focus and train to basically train to hunt.
Can I
that kind of scenario? So
I like that. Can I offer a piece of advice?
Yes.
And this is something I've always thought, but it was reiterated by Steve Ranella and Remy Warren on the Meat Eater podcast a few weeks back. They were talking about this. They were answering listener questions on their podcast, Steve's podcast, and somebody had asked, how do you go from being a Midwesterner to physically prepare for your first mountain hunt? And they were talking about the fact that you see all these people, like you just said, on Instagram, who are lifting weights and trying to get ripped, and they're talking about how, whatever it is, the people I'm talking about. They're just their necks are bigger than their neck goes out past their ears and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
And they were talking about the fact that you don't need to do that. That's not the kind of thing that's really going to help you on an elk hunt or something.
Right.
A lot of that stuff's way overkill. You're wasting your time on certain things, and kind of the ooh-ah muscle groups and stuff that make you look good in the beach aren't really going to be what's going to matter in the mountains when you're hunting elk. And they said the most important thing you can do, and these are guys that have hunted and done stuff out west a ton, and now myself, I've done a ton of backpacking and hiking out there, and I've hunted now 4 or 5 years out there. I think the very most important thing you can do, and what they said too, was just put a pack on your back and walk a shit ton.
Yeah.
And just do that a lot leading up to it. Wear your hiking boots, put a heavy pack on your back, and just walk, whether it be on a treadmill incline or whether it be up and down the 20-foot hill behind your house or whatever it is. Nothing can simulate that type of thing and prepare you for that type of thing than just actually doing it over and over. Doing a bunch of squats or leg lifts or whatever, that stuff will help, but just walk. Wear a pack, and don't get too focused on making your pecs look good, Dan.
Right. Well, I was going more for the glutes,
Okay.
taking a lot of selfies of my glutes and my lower abs. My lower abs need some work. So
I don't know what to say to that.
it doesn't matter. But that's my goal. I just need to get in better shape, and doing that is right, but I need to lose weight too. And because pounds are pounds, right? And pounds on my gut or pounds on my knees and pounds on my legs that I don't necessarily need to be carrying, while I'm up in the mountains. So I need to drop some lbs too.
Yeah, man. I think so many people, plan this whole hunt going out west or whatever it is, and they put so much money and time into everything. But if you don't physically prepare for it,
Right.
What in the world did you prepare with the money and the time and the gear and all that kind of stuff? Because,
Right.
As you saw, that's going to be a limiting factor for most people. Can you just hoof it up the next hill? Can you survive it? Right. It's not easy.
Right. Nope. Other than that, man, so I got this little idea in my head, and my goal, and this might be a 2017, 2018 type deal, is to find and buy enough property to get my second Iowa landowner's tag.
That's exciting.
Yes.
Would it be?
So,
sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, can you adjust that just a little bit?
What do you mean adjust it?
Yeah, adjust that goal just a little bit. So find and buy enough property so you can get a landowner's tag and have enough room for your friend Mark to hunt.
I tell you what, if I could, I would. The cool thing is I'm literally right now, over the past couple months, I've been kind of looking at different little parcels here and there that, or certain areas that I've hunted in the past that maybe just odd parcels where I could break it off, make sure that that parcel gets an easement right, through a property, and only buy like 4 acres, but they're the right 4 acres. You know what I mean? So,
I'd have permission on 1 acre.
You'd have permission on the 4 acres, but we might be 2 trees apart. You know what I mean?
I like talking to you. So.
Yeah. A buck comes by and 2 people shoot it at the same time.
Hey, Dan, you see that buck over there? That's exciting though, man. That's really exciting.
Yeah. So, and when I was talking about, hey, remind me to talk about what we were talking about later so we can talk about it.
Oh, when we were talking about what you were going to talk about?
Yeah. That. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like leading into that would be, chopping down some trees, getting it real thick and nasty, and doing, some timber stand improvement for those areas to just turn that 4 acres into basically a sanctuary for deer, and then just let it set until the time's right, So that is it's nothing really too much to elaborate on. It's just financial planning on my part from here on out. And then the other thing that the last thing that I really want to focus on in 2017 is focus on being a killer, right? And I don't want to get drop crazy out of control nervous when a big buck comes by. I don't want to get that buck fever. I want to get excited. And I don't want to lose that the quote unquote spiritual side that I feel I have to hunting, the enjoying the nature and going after a big buck. But I think part of hunting is being a predator and being a killer. Does a mountain lion or a bobcat or an eagle get nervous when they go after their prey? No, they don't. They would not survive as a species if they got nervous when they were attacking their food. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I feel that I need to get a little bit more of an animal instinct, and just for that period of time when they're in shooting range to become a killer.
Yeah. To be 100%
focused and, it's like, hey, this almost like my life depends on it.
Yeah. That moment of truth, man. That
yeah.
It's no easy way to figure it out. It just, whether it's experience or practice or whatever, but
yeah.
I 100% agree with you there. I think we can all continue to get better there.
And then that's it for me, man. I'm going to do some tweaks to my gear this year, but like I said, this year was satisfactory for me. I had a blast doing what I do, and it never really stops. The summer stuff, the setting up tree stands, the hunting. I got shed hunting season to look forward to. 2016 was an awesome year. Turkey hunting's coming up. Then that's going to transition into the summer stuff, and then I got an elk hunt, and then the next thing you know, man, I'm sitting in a tree stand in Iowa again.
So 3 years ago,
yeah,
you were filming all your hunts, and you filmed your buddy Ryan Iberg.
Yep.
Last year, I think you filmed a little bit, correct?
Yeah, last year I filmed myself shoot a doe.
Yeah.
Really? I think that, and I filmed myself.
You had some buck encounters, I think you filmed, right?
A couple buck encounters, yep.
Yeah, so this year, though, you didn't film anything.
I didn't even bring a camera with me.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. How did it feel this year for the first time in a long time not filming your hunts? Were you glad you did it? Do you miss it?
I don't miss it.
No?
Don't miss it. Nope. Man, for me, it takes away. Yeah, I could have some of that stuff on film to share with my friends, but it's in my head. I don't hunt for anybody. I'm not a hunter because I need to be a hunter. I'm a hunter because I subconsciously maybe need, but man, I do it for me. I'm not, the podcast. Yeah, that's for other people. I think for a while there, when I was doing a lot of filming, it became less fun and more work. And I kind of was like getting turned off by it. But now I've put that camera down now for 2 years, and it's awesome. If someday I get a cameraman and, start documenting my stories again, my season again, hell yeah, that's okay. But I'm never going to probably film myself again.
Interesting. I can understand why you feel that way. I certainly have had times where I've thought that too.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to hear how you feel after, I've always thought after beginning to film on my hunts and everything that it would be a major bummer not, now that I'm so used to having this stuff to look back on. Like, my favorite thing is just being able to look at the film again and see that encounter again, or show my buddy this deer, or whatever. I think that's what I would miss the most. And I've always wondered, if I would miss that too much if I gave it up. Because there's certainly times when what I dislike about it is having all the gear and just having to deal with that when you're out there, instead of being able to just climb into a tree, sit down and relax and hunt, and be 100% focused on the shot when it comes, instead of being focused on turning on the stupid camera, adjusting that, making sure the deer's in the frame, then get your bow, then all this other stuff. I mean, there's a lot of reasons not to film. So it's interesting to hear your experience there.
So you mentioned you had one more thing you wanted to talk about for 2017?
Oh, yeah. So, I talked about the changes I want to make with the whole Holyfield hunt. I talked a little bit about the fact I want to have more places to hunt in general, just having more options and all that. I think the one other thing in 2017, and something I want to continue to do more of in the future, and I kind of touched on this a little bit in the past too, but public land. I want to hunt public land more, and in a bigger picture, I want to focus more of what I'm doing in my career around public land. Because in addition to being a deer hunter, as you know and many of our listeners know, my other passion in life is just wilderness and being out in the mountains or the prairies or river valleys or whatever, being out in these big, wide open public places. I mean, I live and die for that stuff. And we've talked about there's increasingly more and more threats to these places.
Yep.
And I'm kind of transitioning a little bit in just like what my goals are personally. And so while I want to continue doing what I'm doing now, I also want to find more ways to try to lend a hand, if I can, to making sure that these places are there in the future for people like you and me to hunt, or for our kids, whether it be to hunt or hike or fish or whatever it is. So I want to hunt in these types of places more often because it's a challenge. It's very different. It's new. And I'm the type that I enjoy hunting some of the places over and over again. Like, I have places I've hunted over and over, and I enjoy that. But I also constantly need a new challenge. I love the figuring out part of things. So, like, in Ohio, for example, I like hunting our spot down in Ohio, but I figured it out. There's nothing to figure out anymore. Just because of how big it is, it's not very big. So there's only a couple options, really, when it comes right down to it. And I know if I hunt it during the rut, if you put in enough time in like one of two locations, and if you do it in the right wind and stuff, either a buck's going to come through that and you're going to get a shot, or it's just not going to happen because they're not there. There's not a whole lot of figuring out left to do there. What I've enjoyed about the public land and hunting new places is the going into something from ground zero and trying to wrap your head around it and adjusting and scheming and all that kind of stuff. So public land's a lot of fun, and it's really important. And I think in 2017, I've got some stuff I'm working on that I think hopefully will be interesting and helpful on both of those fronts. So that's kind of what I'm looking forward to next year, is doing some cool stuff to get Holyfield and exploring this whole public land thing in a lot of different ways. So that's
awesome.
Where it's at.
We got some work to do.
We do. But it's going to be good. It's going to be a good year, dude.
I'm excited for you and for me.
Ditto. Well, this is our last podcast of 2016. So
adios 2016. It's been real.
It's been real. It's been real good. And thank you, Dan, for sticking around with me for another year, and for everyone listening too. It's not always easy, I don't think.
Yeah, I tell you what, man. there's a lot of work. First off, to the listeners, there's a lot of work that goes into this podcast. So, if for anything, Mark, thank you very much for organizing it, for putting it together, for the opportunity to be your co-host. And as a listener of the podcast, I just want to say thank you for the content. And thanks to all the listeners out there who email us and ask us questions. Now, we may not always answer them, but thank you guys for the support, because without, I don't know if I'm stealing your thunder, but because of you guys, Wired to Hunt podcast is possible. So whatever.
Okay. I echo everything you said 100%, Dan. And with that, I'd say let's shut this thing down for 2016. So big thank you to our partners who help keep this show on the air, who've been with us here in 2016. Thank you to Sitka Gear, Redneck Blinds, Huntera Maps, Yeti Coolers, Ozonics, Carbon Express, Maven Optics, and the Whitetail Institute of North America. And finally, as Dan said, thank you all for listening today and all of this year. We appreciate you being a part of this community so much. So until 2017, have a very happy new year, and stay wired to hunt.
I'm sure a lot of you guys remember the old ceremonial hunting tradition of eating the heart out of the first animal you kill. Meat from those organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. You can get those same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And remember, use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase. You ever get that feeling the walls closing in, the concrete jungle suffocating you? You crave some wide open spaces, the chance to connect with nature, maybe in a spot all your own. Well, head over to land.com. They've got ranches, forests, mountains, streams, you name it. Search by acreage. You can search by location. You can search by the kind of hunting and fishing you're dreaming of. Land.com. It is where the adventure begins.